Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now your host, Tim Johnson.
With more than 150 attorneys, Kean Miller LLP is one of the largest full-service law firms in Louisiana and the largest in the Capital Region. Kean Miller serves the legal needs of the people, businesses, and industries that drive our state. Kean Miller knows the value of people who care for their clients and for each other, people who care for the communities where they live and work. Kean Miller partners Katherine Kean and Blane Clark. Join us when we return on the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Since 1919, we've designed and constructed hundreds of industrial plants, roads, ships, dams, and executed some of the most complex jobs in the world. In fact, our quality and dependability are legendary. Today, the legend continues as Brown & Root delivers engineering, construction, maintenance, and industrial specialty services throughout the U.S. and the world from our headquarters here in Louisiana. We are Brown & Root.
In Baton Rouge, see your Good Neighbor State Farm agent Brady Flavin for your insurance and financial needs.
For over a quarter century, Kelly's has operated with honesty, integrity, and above all, safety. Kelly's features a fleet of quality equipment operated by dedicated, safety-minded employees skilled in land clearing, above-ground right-of-way maintenance, vegetation control, station yard and manned facility maintenance, above-ground pipeline support, and more. Kelly's Industrial Services, where pipeline right-of-way maintenance gets done right.
Consumers and property owners with construction projects can have a successful result or regretful experiences that could have been avoided. Before any construction project, verify licensure of the contractor and check references. Scammers will claim to be insured or bonded, so always check first. Download our app, LA Contractor, from the Android or Apple Store. Visit our website, lacontractor.org, or contact the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. We're here to help before things go wrong. Hire a licensed contractor. It's the law.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Very pleased to be joined today by two partners with the Kean Miller Law Firm. We've got Blane Clark, who is the managing partner, and Katherine Kean. Guys, welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for having us here.
We're glad you are. We're going to get into a lot of stuff about Kean Miller. Great law firm doing great work for industry, particularly in this region. But let's start off with a little bit about you guys. Let's talk about your practice areas, what you do specifically. Katherine, tell us about yours.
Yeah, and thanks for having me here today. I practice mainly in the utility regulatory area, so there's a lot of eyes glazing over immediately, usually when anybody says the words utility regulatory, but it's really a fascinating area for me. So what we do is we represent telecommunications companies, petroleum pipeline carriers, water companies, and that sort of thing, but the majority of our work is representing industry in Louisiana on their electric power issues.
A lot of work, I'm sure, and as you and I talked about before the show started today, before the Public Service Commission, the Louisiana Public Service Commission. I know that's interesting work as well.
Absolutely. So a lot of that electric regulatory work is before the Public Service Commission. If you can imagine, our home electric bills may cost in the hundreds of dollars, but for industry, their monthly bills are in the millions of dollars. So every little adjustment to that electric rate has a big impact on them.
And it specifically speaks to competitiveness, right? Because if utility rates are different in Louisiana than they are in Mississippi or Alabama or Texas, that's a competitive disadvantage for the businesses here. So we've got to keep an eye on those sort of things. Blane, let's talk about the work that you do, your practice area. 30 years or so now?
Yes.
Tell us what you do on a day-to-day basis.
I'm what is called a transactional attorney, or a business or corporate attorney. I represent businesses, for example, that might be interested in selling the business or buying another business. I help the client explain the process to them, draft the agreements, negotiate the agreements. And in a firm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, you have to be a little more varied or have a more variety of practice than you would at a big firm, let's say in Atlanta. And that's one of the things I like the most is we get to represent small companies, middle-sized companies, and large industrial clients. So we see a little bit of everything, and each of those clients needs something different. The small mom and pop, they need their hand held a lot. They don't, it's maybe the first time they've ever been through this process, so you need to explain it to them. The large industrial clients, you're dealing with professionals who do this every day. And
have their own attorneys in-house, so that you probably deal with a lot as well, right?
For those clients, a lot of times you're dealing with the in-house attorneys. So on the industrial side, a lot of my work, personal work, is in the midstream side, representing a large pipeline company, negotiating agreements between the pipeline company and the oil and gas companies. Much of it is offshore in the Gulf of Mexico on deep water transactions.
Let me ask both of you this question. I want to talk a little bit also about the fact that you're managing partner at Kean Miller and what that means, but two different areas of the law that you practice in and you specialize in. You mentioned that you do a lot of other things, but how did you choose the specific area of the law that you are working in? Katherine, let's start with you. Did you have a special affinity for that type of law? Was it based on some experience that you had? How did you get into specifically what you're doing?
Well, when I graduated from law school, I didn't even know this practice area existed, as you may imagine. So the first law firm I worked with was a small firm that did telecommunications work before the Public Service Commission. And so that kind of got my foot in the door. And obviously when I came to Kean Miller with their large industrial base, it just made all the sense in the world to pick up the electric side of it. But what the practice area is for me is I think it's fascinating for a number of reasons. One, I mean, we have litigation. It's more administrative type hearings and that sort of thing, but we have that side of the practice. There's also a lot of technical aspects of it. I was a science major in undergraduate school, and so I love the science and the technical aspect of the practice area. And then dealing with the Public Service Commission, of course, we've got the politics too, which always makes it interesting.
Well, you and I talked about some of our common friends on the Public Service Commission and how interesting that is and how fun and how much you enjoy that. Blane, let's talk about your practice area. A lot of transactional work. You talked about mergers and acquisitions. How did you get into that area?
Well, like most of the important decisions in my life, someone else made it.
I understand that clearly.
When I was looking at going into undergraduate school, I asked a friend of mine's father, what do you think I should major in? He said, what do you like? I said, I like math. You ought to go into accounting. Not that it has anything to do with math, but I went into accounting. Then when I got out of undergraduate school and was getting out of law school, people said, well, what did you major in? I said, accounting. You ought to do business work.
There you go.
So that's what I did.
Talk to us about being the managing partner at a large law firm like Kean Miller. What do those duties entail?
Well, we're a large business. We have over 150 attorneys, probably over 300 total employees and partners. So there's a lot of administrative, human resource, labor and employment matters, negotiating agreements for the firm. There's a lot of issues that we have, just like any other business. So the managing partner is basically who the non-attorney professional managers report to. So I interact with our executive director, our human resource manager, our facilities manager, et cetera. And that's kind of a side job. Practicing law is still my primary job, but I also have this second job now as managing partner. And I'll have that for a term. And at the end of my term, I'll go back to full-time practice law.
So that rotates maybe between some of the partners that are in the firm. We're going to come back from the break in just a minute and really talk about why Kean Miller is the right choice in this area for industry. But we got about 30 or 40 seconds left in this segment, Katherine. So I'm going to ask you, tell us a little bit about the history of Kean Miller.
Kean Miller was formed on Valentine's Day in 1983. 9 attorneys at a very well-respected firm here in Baton Rouge decided to leave and start their own firm. And they wanted to really develop a firm with a positive culture where the attorneys were friends first and business partners second, and where there was not competition among attorneys for work, but instead there was the incentive, every incentive, to share that work with your partner and to get that work to the most qualified person. So that was the beginning.
It really is something that marks Kean Miller, is your focus on people, and we'll talk about that some as the show goes along. We'll take a break and we'll come back. We'll talk about what differentiates Kean Miller, why Kean Miller, so to speak. We're visiting with Blane Clark and Katherine Kean. They're partners with Kean Miller, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
It might be one of the most efficient, most effective methods of communications we've ever used.
What if I said that the American dream is alive and well, and that it exists for anyone willing to build it? That the power of a nation does not reside in its monuments, but in the hearts and minds of those who built them, and that the country's greatest heroes also wear hard hats. In today's America, it's not enough to dream about the future. You have to build it. Build your future at byf.org.
For more than 25 years, the TJC Group has been helping industry communicate and build relationships with communities, elected officials, and governmental agencies. We are the leading firm in the U.S. for the development, management, and facilitation of industry-based community advisory panels.
Whether you're building a new facility or you manage an existing business, let us put our community and governmental relations experience to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
Spadel's Florist was founded over 30 years ago. From my mom's kitchen, we have grown into one of the largest florists in this area. There's a sense in our community that you stick together, good times or bad. And oil and gas is part of that family. They're my neighbors, they're my customers, they're the person I'm sitting next to at church. If oil and gas is doing well, all of our businesses are doing well. We are Louisiana Oil and Gas.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Visiting with Katherine Kean and Blane Clark. They're partners with Kean Miller Law Firm. Talked a little bit about the history of the firm. We talked about your individual practice areas. Talked a little bit about what it's like to be a managing partner at a large law firm. But let's start to talk about what differentiates Kean Miller. So I asked this question: why is Kean Miller the right legal choice for Louisiana industry?
Tim, I think it's because of our experience representing clients in this industry in matters that are of the utmost importance to them. We have been representing the Louisiana petrochemical industry since the inception of that industry in Louisiana. Many of our national and international clients came to us as early as the 1920s, our predecessor firm. And when they were looking to locate in Louisiana and they needed assistance buying a piece of real estate on which to build their facility. So we've been representing them a long time, and we've been in this industry a long time. As their needs grew and became more complex, particularly as federal and state regulations became more in-depth, onerous, sophisticated, our ability to provide those services became more and more important. And
that experience factor is critical, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, you've learned, I mean, that's typically how you grow and you learn. Obviously, you've got important degrees, but when you get into the practice of a specific area and you start to represent a specific industry as much as you guys have, the experience and the intellectual knowledge overall from the firm's perspective, critically important, isn't it?
It is. You know, if you're looking at opening a plant or starting a plant, and you have environmental permits that you need, you don't want to go to an attorney that has never applied for those environmental permits. You want to go to someone that's applied for many of them and have seen all the different wrinkles, because in every area that we practice in, it's not all black and white. There are a lot of gray areas and different wrinkles, and having seen them before, it's not new to you. So you know how to react when something comes up. And I think it's very important.
Katherine, same for you, I suspect, in your practice area. That experience makes it critically important for your clients, right?
Absolutely, and I think it's not only in responding to their questions and the issues that they bring to us, but it's also knowing what types of issues that they have and how they operate, so that when we see a change in law or we see, you know, the potential for a change in law that could impact them. I mean, I think we are very proactive in advising them so that they have a heads up on what's coming and they can get involved in the process if that's the best thing for them to do, or at least be prepared for it.
You talk about proactivity and the proactivity of the firm. That really speaks to the next question that I want both of you to address for us. Glenn Fontenot, the plant manager of Methanex, was on our show last week, and the thing we talked about, or one of the things we talked about Glenn with, was this whole idea of company culture, right? What does it mean in terms of your internal culture? What does it mean to operate in a culture like Louisiana? Blane, let's start with you. Talk about Kean Miller's culture.
Well, the Kean Miller was formed in 1983 by a group of attorneys that left the old firm. And when I first joined Kean Miller in 1984, I heard a lot of stories about the old firm. And they had a clear vision when they formed Kean Miller on what they wanted the culture to be. A lot of law firms haven't had that experience. They've just been the way they've been for 100 years. We had founding partners who wanted the firm to have a culture and an atmosphere where the attorneys and the staff could collaborate with each other. And to do that, you have to like each other. It's hard to collaborate when you're dealing with someone you don't like. And so their culture was to put people first. And so that both our attorneys, our staff, and our clients, we would try to have a culture and an atmosphere that allow us to do the best we could for our clients. And really the only way to do that is through collaboration.
We really focus a lot when we talk about the firm on people. The people who work there, the people that you serve, the people who live and work in the communities where you are. What's your perspective on that, Katherine? In terms of culture, what's the experience been like for you?
I came to Kean Miller in a very small firm, and at that time, while Kean Miller was not very large, to me it was a large firm. And I really didn't know what to expect. I was a little bit hesitant about coming to what at that time I thought was a large firm. But the culture has been everything, and in fact, today, self-examination is good, and when we go back and visit with people in the firm and get input, what are the things that you like most about the firm? What can we do to improve the firm? And we do that quite often to get input. I mean, the key thing that attorneys, staff members, everyone always says is the firm's culture. That's the best thing about the firm. We need to preserve the firm's culture.
We had a questionnaire a few years ago where we asked the partners, what do you like the most about Kean Miller? And they said the people. Yeah. And what it's the second, the culture. Right. So it was those two things. And it's interesting when you say why Kean Miller. We interview our clients from time to time, and we ask them, why do you continue to use Kean Miller? And they'll mention the things I talked about, our experience, our knowledge of their business, our Louisiana know-how, because Louisiana is held out as being a little different. But one of the things they mention is they continue to use us because they like working with our people. It's as simple as that.
We've got about a minute left in this segment, Katherine, so I'd like you to talk about something else that's critically important to any successful business, and that's diversity. How diverse is Kean Miller?
Well, Kean Miller has recognized the value of racial, ethnic, cultural diversity and the value that brings both the firm and, frankly, our clients. And we promote a philosophy of inclusion both within the firm, and we promote that in the community. And I'm proud to say that we have one of the highest percentages of female attorneys and partners in the firm. And we rank among those firms that have the highest percentages of minorities. So that's a very important issue for Kean Miller.
When you think about that diversity, you think about that culture, it speaks to productivity, right? It speaks to good service for clients. And I know that that's what you guys are focused on. I want to take a break. We come back, I want to talk about some of the other areas that you guys are engaged in. I want to continue to talk about why Kean Miller is the appropriate choice for industry in our state. We're visiting with Katherine King and Blane Clark, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Tim Johnson here for Gulf Coast Occupational Medicine. With some of the most knowledgeable and hardest working medical professionals in Louisiana and 8 convenient locations in Greater Baton Rouge, Gulf Coast provides injury management, physical exams, medical surveillance, and substance abuse testing. Once you know the folks at Gulf Coast, you'll realize they are your best option to protect your safety record and your bottom line. Gulf Coast Occupational Medicine. Ride the wave to safety.
For more than 20 years, the TJC Group has been helping companies assess their training needs and to develop programs that improve the effectiveness and productivity of their teams.
Training doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. Let us put our experience and expertise to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
What if I said that whatever good things you build you? And that in this economy, sweat never loses its value? What if I said that there isn't a challenge in the world too great for a craft professional with the right tools, and that the steps that lead from where you are to where you want to be can only be built by you? Build your future at byf.org.
Kean Miller traces its roots to the dawn of the petrochemical industry in Louisiana. As the legal needs of the sector grew, our firm emerged as a leader in environmental law, economic development, real estate, employment, utilities regulations, and more. Today, these same clients and those new to our state continue to rely upon the firm and its attorneys for creative ideas, practical advice, and Louisiana know-how. Industrial strength law. Learn more at keanmiller.com.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show, visiting with two partners of Kean Miller, Katherine King and Blane Clark. Guys, we ended the last segment, specifically, Katherine, talking about diversity, right? And so let's talk a little bit more about that. I know you guys are really proud of how specifically diverse the firm is and what that diversity means for your clients. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm very proud to say that 38% of our attorneys are female and 13% are minorities. And of my law partners, 26% are female and 10% are minorities. So as a firm, that is something that we're committed to. Obviously, we'll try to improve those numbers down the road, but we're very happy with where we are. But another aspect of promoting diversity is our Kean Miller Connection program, and I wanted to tell you about that because it's an incredible program. It was started by my law partner, Linda Clark, about 10 years ago. We'll have our 10th program in just a few weeks. And it's basically a law school preparatory class for college students who are members of groups that have traditionally been underrepresented in law school.
Wow.
And so we bring these college students into the firm, and it's a 2-day seminar. It's free tuition. And while they're there, they have a mock law school class. We bring in law professors. They have presentations on law school admissions, the law school exam. There's network with attorneys. We bring attorneys from various practice groups in to meet with them in small groups to talk about a day in the life. And so they have a better understanding of the experience of what it's like to be a lawyer. And I hope that they get a lot out of it. I know I do every time I participated in it.
We get some great responses from the students who've been through the program, some of whom have gone through law school, some of whom now work at Kean Miller. And that's how we met them, was through this program. You mentioned meeting other attorneys, but we've also had attorneys from in-house departments, from large clients, make the trip down to Baton Rouge and New Orleans to attend and participate. So we've had a great response from our clients to that program.
I want to ask you, Blane, about some other practice areas that are important to industry. But before we do that, I want one final thing on this diversity issue. Because I have so many friends within that firm and because I've had a relationship with that firm, here's one of the things I know, that it's great to be able to say we've got these specific statistics in terms of our diversity. But the real value to the firm, and I know that you guys feel this way, is the diversity of viewpoints, opinions, and experiences that are brought to bear for your clients. That's really the most critical part, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And many of our clients are equally diverse, and they look at us and they want us to look like they look.
Right.
And so I think we're fortunate that we identified this need many, many years ago, and we've been fortunate to have a diverse firm.
Let's talk about some of the other practice areas that Kean Miller focuses on that we know are critically important to industry in this region. Why don't you start us off, Blane?
I look at several foundational practices. Catherine's is one of them, and she's talked about the energy regulatory side. And I mentioned earlier environmental. That's a huge practice area in this industry. Industrial real estate. We have a lot of attorneys that do commercial real estate or residential real estate. But industrial real estate is very sophisticated, much different than buying a house.
Right.
You know, one of our attorneys, Matt Gregory, has been practicing in this area for many, many years and is extremely well known. Another is state and local taxes, and a lot of these, as Katherine mentioned, you know, is the dollars that the industry spends on state and local taxes are significant. So any change can mean a lot of money, and having the attorneys can help advise them on the best structure from a state and local tax point of view, and also from an incentive point of view.
Well, one of the things we know and that we hear a lot about is that Louisiana's tax code is one of the more difficult to understand in the country, right? And so having great, knowledgeable, experienced legal representation is critically important as you try to navigate that tax code. Right?
Well, I mean, the state and local taxes, they have the rule, and then there's a bunch of exceptions and a bunch of exemptions, and then in the recent session they did away with a lot of the exemptions. So a lot of clients are kind of scurrying around now trying to figure it out, but it's never easy, and what the law says and what the Department of Revenue says are not always the same. And so you have to be able to navigate those issues.
And you need someone who is knowledgeable. We've got about 2.5 minutes left in the show, so let's transition to your approach for the future. What's on the horizon for Kean Miller? Where are you guys headed? Blane, let's start off with you, and then Katherine, you jump in as well.
Well, like many industries, including the petrochemical industry, the legal industry has changed dramatically in the last 30 years with technology and with a lot of other challenges. So we have to constantly look, our firm management, our strategic planning teams, how can we put ourselves in the best position to face those challenges and to make us put us in the best position to represent our clients and provide the legal services that they need. So we continue to do that.
It's really about always growing to meet the demands, to meet the changes of the economy. Your perspective, your practice specifically, and the firm in general, what's the future look like?
Well, I think the future is very bright for Louisiana as a whole. Obviously, from the industrial standpoint, we've had significant development in the last few years. That is falling off some now, and we'll see what happens with natural gas and oil prices about what happens in the future. But overall, Louisiana's been very fortunate in what has happened over the last few years within the state. And for our firm, as providers of service to industry, obviously that has helped us as well. So
we've got about 35 seconds left in the show, so let's end from this perspective, Blane. Your general message to Louisiana's business community, and particularly the industrial community, about Kean Miller.
Well, I think with Kean Miller, they're getting a firm that has been there, done that. We have the experience to represent them. We're constantly looking at the needs that they're facing and trying to position ourselves to be able to provide those services. So if there's a practice area that becomes important, we move into that practice area and try to develop it so that we can best meet their needs.
Staying proactive really is the key, right? Katherine King, Blane Clark,
thank you.
Kean Miller.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys for being with us today.
Enjoyed it.
That's a wrap, guys. Thanks for joining us. Join us again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.